Do you ever wonder how someone can be on the phone, talking clearly, asking for help, and still disappear without a trace? On the night of May 14th, 2008 in rural Minnesota, that is exactly what happened to a 19-year-old named Brandon Swanson, and, to this day, no one knows where he went. Brandon was a college student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. He was described as responsible, calm, and familiar with rural life. That night, he had been celebrating the end of the semester with friends. It was supposed to be a simple evening, driving back home to Lynn, Minnesota. But things didn't go as planned. Late that night, Brandon left to return home alone. He was driving a Chevy Lumina on dark gravel roads in western Minnesota. At some point during the drive, he believed he had reached Lynn. But he was wrong. He had actually driven into a different rural area near Marshall, Minnesota, miles off course. Around 2 a.m., Brandon's car became stuck in a ditch. He tried to free it but failed. With no cell signal in most rural areas, he did what many wouldn't expect. He called his parents. When his father answered, Brandon sounded calm. He explained that his car was stuck but said he was near Lynn and believed he knew the general direction home. His father told him to stay with the vehicle and help would come. But Brandon, thinking he was close, decided to walk toward what he believed were nearby lights. That decision changed everything. While walking through the darkness, Brandon stayed on the phone with his father. He described landmarks, trees, fields, and what he thought were road lights in the distance. But something wasn't adding up. His father, confused by what he was hearing, realized Brandon was not where he thought he was. He tried to get him to stop walking and return to the car. Then came one of the most chilling moments in the case. Brandon suddenly said he was near a ditch and thought he was close to Lynn. But his father, who was looking at a map, knew that wasn't possible. The geography simply didn't match. Minutes later, Brandon said he thought he could see lights. He attempted to cross terrain in the dark, likely uneven fields and ditches common in rural farmland. Then during the call, his voice changed. He said he was going to reposition himself. And then, suddenly, silence. The phone call didn't immediately drop. It stayed open. His father continued calling out, but Brandon stopped responding. After repeated attempts to get him back on the line, the call eventually ended. That was the last time anyone ever heard from him. What followed was one of the most extensive rural search efforts in Minnesota history. Law enforcement, volunteers, and search teams combed through fields, ditches, rivers, and farmland around the area where his phone last pinged. Search dogs were brought in. Helicopters scanned the landscape. Thermal imaging was used. Nothing, no clothing, no personal items, no sign of a struggle. Not even his car was near where he was believed to have been walking. Only one clue stood out. The phone call data suggested Brandon was still moving after leaving his vehicle, but the exact path remains uncertain. Several theories emerged. One theory suggests Brandon may have fallen into one of the many deep, narrow drainage ditches common in Minnesota farmland. These can be extremely difficult to see at night and nearly impossible to escape from without assistance. Another theory considers disorientation. In rural darkness, without streetlights or landmarks, even short distances can become misleading. Brandon may have walked in circles or moved farther away from help than he realized. A more unsettling possibility is that he encountered water, streams, creeks, or irrigation ditches where currents or steep embankments could have made escape difficult. But despite years of searching, no physical evidence has ever confirmed any of these theories. There were also questions raised about his phone signal. At the time, cell coverage in that region was inconsistent. The call repeatedly switched towers, which makes reconstructing his exact movement extremely difficult. Investigators followed up on every lead. Farmers in the area were interviewed. Nearby properties were searched. Even years later, the case remained open, but nothing changed. No confirmed sightings, No recovered belongings, no remains, just a phone call that ended mid-conversation in the dark. What makes the case of Brandon Swanson so haunting is not just the disappearance, it's the timeline. He was actively communicating. He was aware. He was trying to navigate his way to safety. And yet somewhere in that short window of time, he vanished completely. Over the years, his family has continued to search for answers. Flyers, interviews, and renewed attention have brought the case back into public discussion multiple times. Still, the central question remains unanswered. What happened in those final minutes? Did Brandon fall into terrain no one thought to search closely enough? Did he become lost in the vast, empty farmland where every direction looks the same in the dark? Or did something else interrupt that phone call? Something no search effort has ever uncovered. The most unsettling part is how close he was to help. He was on the phone. His father was guiding him. He was speaking, thinking, reacting in real time. And then suddenly, nothing. Today, more than a decade later, the disappearance of Brandon Swanson remains one of Minnesota's most enduring mysteries. A case defined not by what was found, but by what vanished in the middle of a sentence. And somewhere in those rural fields, the answer is still waiting to be discovered.